Bible prophecy is active and unfolding daily. Zechariah 12, Isaiah 17, Psalm 83, Ezekiel 38. Here is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Shalom. Welcome to this week's newscast. Isaiah chapter 17, verse 1 reads the mournful, inspired prediction concerning Damascus, capital of Syria, and Israel's bulwark against Assyria. Behold, Damascus will cease to be a city and will become a heap of ruins. The prophecy of Isaiah 17 is emerging in greater ways, my friends. From Ynet News, according to Western diplomats, a Russian expeditionary force has already arrived in Syria and set up camp at an airbase near Damascus. In the coming weeks, thousands of Russian military personnel are set to arrive in Syria in a major military intervention. And Western diplomatic sources have emphasized that the Obama administration is fully aware of the Russian intent to intervene directly in Syria. From Al Jazeera, Islamic State fighters on Monday, August 31st, battled Syrian rebel forces in Asali, a southern district of Damascus, bringing ISIS within 5 kilometers of the center of the capital. Quote, "This is the closest ISIS has ever been to the heart of Damascus," close quote, said Rami Abdel Rahman, the head of the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights. Also, the Lebanese news site Janubia reported that Syrian security forces arrested the son of a high-ranking Hezbollah military official on charges of buying weapons from Syrian army soldiers and selling them to ISIS members in Kalamun. Then from the Washington Post, the CIA and the Joint Special Operations Command are flying drones over Syria in a secret campaign to hunt high-value terrorists as a part of a targeted killing program. The clandestine program represents a significant escalation to the CIA's involvement in the war in Syria. Syria is a new front in a spreading U.S. campaign of secret operations and drone strikes that encompasses Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, and parts of North Africa. And the Daily Beast reported that on August 22nd, the Bosphorus Naval News website showed the Russian ship Nikolai Filchenkov with military equipment visible on deck, KAM-AZ trucks, and at least 4 BTR infantry fighting vehicles. On August 24th, the Orcs blog discovered at least 1 BTR-82A in the coastal province of Latakia, which has lately been contested impressively by a collection of Islamist rebels groups. Assad's National Defense Force disclosed the fighting vehicle in action in a news video from the Latakia front. The report also captured unmistakable Russian spoken in the background in instructions to the crew, compelling evidence that Russians have embedded with the Syrian military. Syria's fragmentation into separate battling enclaves is intensifying. The 2 main enclaves are Central Syria, controlled by the Assad regime, and the Islamic State. The Assad regime and Hezbollah, like the opposition, have been taking heavy casualties. The nuclear deal between Iran and the world powers has boosted Iran's capacity to support the Assad regime, and the anticipated lifting of sanctions on Iran is set to enable it to funnel additional resources to this purpose. Further, from the Washington Free Beacon, Iran has been spending billions of dollars to fund the salaries of terrorists across the Middle East, according to a Congressional Research Service report conducted at the request of Illinois Senator Mark Kirk. The report discloses funding of millions of dollars in monthly payments to pro-government forces in Syria, more than $1 billion in military aid to fighters in Iraq, and around $20 million annually to Hamas terrorists. Things are really ramping up, my friends. Turning to wars and rumors of wars. On Tuesday, September 1st, Islamic State militants are maintaining their offensive in towns at the heart of a safe zone that U.S. and Turkish authorities want to carve out in northern Syria, despite Turkish fighter jets recently launching their first airstrikes as part of the American-led coalition against the jihadist terror army. The fight for the countryside to the north of Aleppo is now ratcheting up rapidly. Islamist rebel factions mounted several rocket barrages at ISIS positions and managed to retake the town of Sadaf after heavy clashes with the extremists. From the times of Israel, 2 rockets were fired from Gaza at Israel, but fell in Palestinian territory, with one hitting a house. A number of injuries were reported. From the New York Times, some of the toughest anti-American voices in Iran said on Tuesday that the U.S. remains their country's top enemy, guilty of uncountable crimes. The head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Major General Mohammad Ali Jafari, announced plans to expand the reach of Iran's missiles and warned that despite the nuclear deal, America was still the, quote, same great Satan, close quote. Hamas is seizing wood and other materials imported into Gaza for civilian construction projects and using it to build tunnels to attack Israel. IDF Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories, Major General Yoav Mordecai, told the Palestinian Ma'an news agency on Tuesday, saying, quote, Hamas operatives have forcefully taken over storage facilities housing construction imports and has seized them for the organization's underground infrastructure, close quote. On Wednesday, September 2nd, from Fars, Iran, the top commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards in Tehran province, Brigadier General Mohsen Khazemani, said that, quote, they, meaning the U.S. and Israel, should know that the Islamic Revolution will continue enhancing its preparedness until it overthrows Israel and liberates Palestine. And we will continue defending not just our own country, but also all the oppressed people of the world, especially those countries that are standing on the forefront of confrontation with the Zionists, close quote. From the Times of Israel, bullets fired from a Hamas training camp in Gaza hit an Israeli home in Kibbutz Netiv HaAsara on Wednesday. One bullet shattered the window of a home and hit a television while 2 children, aged 6 and 9, were watching it. And from the Jerusalem Post, Israeli rescue forces were pelted with stones after helping to extricate Palestinians trapped on the roof of a 5-story burning building in the HalleluYah neighborhood of eastern Jerusalem. In a joint operation of the Israel Police, Border Police, and Fire Service, the Palestinians were evacuated without injury. But the Israeli forces were then attacked as they were leaving the neighborhood. A new video produced by ISIS Wilayat Sinai branch in Egyptian Sinai, as released on Wednesday, revealing sophisticated weaponry that the group hopes to use to launch a war against Israel. The video calls Sinai the southern gates to Jerusalem, and an opening to fight a war against the Jews. Then on Thursday, September 3rd, Lieutenant Commander of the Islamic Revolution Guard Corps, Brigadier General Hossein Salami, warned Israel and the U.S. that the Iranian armed forces will annihilate all their interests in case they take the slightest military move against Iran. Quote, "We monitor their acts day and night and will take every opportunity to set fire to all their economic and political interests if they do a wrong deed." Close quote. In case of enemy action, Iran will, quote, "cut off our enemy's hands and fingers and will then send its dust into the air." Close quote. From the Washington Post, 4 American and 2 international peacekeepers with the multinational force of observers were wounded in 2 bomb blasts in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula and required medical evacuation. The 2 international troops hit an improvised explosive device with their vehicle, and then the 4 Americans were hit with a second explosion on another vehicle while attempting to respond and provide help. The Pentagon is concerned about deteriorating security in northeastern Sinai, home to MFO North Camp, a base 10 miles west of Egypt's border with Israel. From Haaretz, 5 American tourists mistakenly entered the Palestinian village of Jebel Juhar near Hebron on Thursday and were attacked. The tourists were hit by stones, and later their vehicle was set on fire, apparently by a fire bomb. A Palestinian brought the group of yeshiva students into his home and called Israeli security forces to rescue them. Then on Friday, September 4th, Tal Inbar, head of the Space Research Center at the Fisher Institute for Air and Space Strategic Studies in Herzliya, said this week that Israel will have to deal with armed, hostile attack drones from Lebanon or Gaza capable of firing rockets or small missiles at Israeli targets. Both Hezbollah and Hamas have their own drone fleets. Tal Inbar elaborated, saying, quote, "We have seen armed Iranian drones, and the most advanced of these is the Shahed 129. Hezbollah announced that it has this UAV," close quote. Inbar estimated that the missiles on board the Iranian drones appear to be anti-tank missiles, and it would take them about 30 seconds to cross from Lebanon into Israel to strike an Israeli vehicle. The Assad regime in Syria has deployed Russian drones, and Egypt has purchased China's Wing Lung medium-altitude, long-endurance drone. Inbar added, quote, "We are seeing the whole area become flooded with UAVs. Certainly, the skies are filling up with them," close quote. Then on Saturday, September 5th, at least 47 fighters were killed in northern Syria in renewed fighting between the Islamic State group jihadists and rebels in the Aleppo province. The fighting occurred in the town of Mareya, which ISIS has been trying to capture from the rebel forces who are in control. 27 Islamic State jihadists and 20 Islamist and other rebel fighters have been killed in clashes. Ram Ben Barak, Director General of the Israel Ministry for Intelligence Affairs and a candidate to be the next director of the Mossad, gives us a very insightful picture. Quote, "It is quite possible that the next objective of the Islamic State organization will be the Shiite community in southern Lebanon, namely Hezbollah. They are already fighting against one another in Syria, and if ISIS wins over there, they will advance into Lebanon. Assad's military is practically shattered at this time, and it seems that Syria is advancing toward a situation of an Alawite-dominated area, an ISIS-dominated area, and an area dominated by other rebel groups, including Jabhat al-Nusra. We need to look forward and consider the possibility of ISIS moving on to their next objective in southern Lebanon. Hezbollah will be crippled without Syria, as it will be difficult for them to take delivery of the arms shipments from Iran, and that is important for us." Still quoting. "But it is by no means certain that the alternative will be any better. The war in Syria will stabilize eventually, and then we will once again become the common enemy. We must prepare for that. With regard to the Palestinian issue, it is no coincidence that the Palestinians have not launched a third intifada to this day. They are looking around them. They see what is taking place in Egypt, what is taking place in Syria, and overall, despite all the problems, their situation is relatively good, and they should not worsen it by staging another uprising." Close quote. Next week, on the 13th, 14th, and 15th, is Abba Father Yahweh's Kodesh appointment with mankind, my friends, known as the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, or most accurately as Yom Teruah, the day of shouting, the day of blowing trumpets. This is, I believe, the Father's Kodesh appointment to enact the Net Chetef, the rapture. Once again, I am not saying the rapture will occur, but I am saying it looks more likely than any previous year I've ever seen. Last Thursday, I made a video titled "The Children of Elohim." It not only explains who will be taken in the Net Chetef, but it also explains why Elohim allows evil in the world, why he allowed Adam and Eve to sin in the first place. If you haven't watched it, I encourage you to do so. It's almost an hour long, so make yourself a nice cup of coffee and grab a pen and notepad for taking notes. You'll see this graphic at the end of the video, which you can click on, and also a text link beneath this video that you can click on, and it'll take you over to that video. And I hope you do watch it if you haven't already. To sum up the news, last week we saw a Russian expeditionary force setting up camp at an airbase in Syria near Damascus, with thousands of Russian military personnel arriving in Syria for a major military intervention in the coming weeks. Islamic State fighters battling Syrian rebel forces in a southern district of Damascus, bringing ISIS within 5 kilometers of the center of the capital. Syria's fragmentation into separate battling enclaves intensifying, the CIA and the Joint Special Operations Command flying drones over Syria in a secret campaign to hunt high-value terrorists as part of a targeted killing program, all pointing at the Isaiah 17 prophecy. Then we saw a high-ranking Hezbollah military official buying weapons from Syrian army soldiers and selling them to ISIS members. The Russian ship Nikolai Filchenkov carrying military equipment visible on its deck. Iran spending billions of dollars to fund the salaries of terrorists across the Middle East. The fight for the countryside to the north of Aleppo ratcheting up rapidly. 2 rockets fired from Gaza at Israel, falling in Palestinian territory, and 1 hitting a house in a residential neighborhood. The head of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps announcing plans to expand the reach of Iran's missiles to America. Hamas seizing wood and other materials imported into Gaza for some civilian construction projects to build tunnels to attack Israel. The top commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards in Tehran province threatening to overthrow Israel and liberate Palestine. Bullets fired from a Hamas training camp in Gaza hitting an Israeli home. Israeli rescue forces pelted with stones after helping to extricate Palestinians trapped on the roof of a 5-story burning building, and the Israeli forces then attacked as they were leaving the neighborhood. A new video produced by ISIS revealing sophisticated weaponry that the group hopes to use to launch a war against Israel. Lieutenant Commander of the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps warning Israel and the U.S. that the Iranian armed forces will annihilate all their interests if they take the slightest military move against Iran. 4 American and 2 international peacekeepers with the multinational force of observers wounded in 2 bomb blasts in Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. 5 American tourists attacked after mistakenly entering a Palestinian village. Warnings that Israel will have to deal with armed, hostile attack drones from Lebanon or Gaza capable of firing rockets or small missiles at Israeli targets. And 47 fighters killed in northern Syria in renewed fighting between the Islamic State group jihadists and rebels in Aleppo province. And that, my friends, is what the LameStream Media is not telling you. Elohim willing. Elohim willing. I'll see you here again next week. Either way, stay safe. Shalom.
Crowded rooms, I need more space than I consume. Enough is time alone with you, underneath a naked moon, sharing confidential moods and making chatter. Mockingbird nocturnal sings notations of eternal things, entering the quantum breeze, flying not for want of wings. He lights his gaze on you and me, simply because we matter.